complement of graph. Complement of graph. Suppose G is one graph and complement of G, complement of graph G is a graph H on same vertex set such that two distinct vertices of H are adjacent if and only if they are not adjacent in G. Suppose G is one graph, complement of this graph G is graph H on the same vertex set. So G and the complement of this graph G, H both have same vertex set. Okay, so G and H both have same vertex set. Now complement of this graph G is a graph H such that if two vertices of H are adjacent to each other, if and only if they are not adjacent in H. If they are not adjacent in H, then the vertices are adjacent in. If they are not adjacent in G, they are adjacent in H. If they are adjacent in G, they are not adjacent in H. Okay? Suppose G is one graph, complement of this graph is H such that both have same vertex set. Now, two distinct vertices of H are adjacent if and only they are not adjacent in G. See one example. Just take four vertices. Suppose this is one graph. Suppose this is vertex V1, V2, V3, V4. This is the graph G. Okay. Now complement of this graph. So V1, V2, V3, V4, these are the vertices of G. This is the graph G. Now complement of this graph G is one graph. Both are the same vertex set. So these are four vertices. This vertex is V4. This is V3. This is V2. This one is V1. Suppose this is the graph H. Okay. This is graph G. Now complement of this graph G has same vertices V1, V2, V3, V4. Now see, V1 and V2 are adjacent in G. V1 and V2, these two vertices are adjacent in G. So these are not adjacent in H. V1 and V3, these are not adjacent in G. V1 and V3, these two vertices are not adjacent in G. So they are adjacent in H. V1 and V4, these are adjacent in G. So they are not adjacent in H. Okay. V2 and V1, they are adjacent in G. So they are not adjacent. V2, V3, they are adjacent here in G. So they are not adjacent in H. V2, V4, they are adjacent in G. So they are not adjacent in H. Next, V3, V1, they are not adjacent. So they are adjacent in H. V3, V2, they are adjacent. So they are not adjacent. V3, V4, they are not adjacent here. So they are adjacent in H. V4, V1, they are adjacent. Okay. So this is the complement. This graph is the complement of this graph G. This is the graph H and this graph is the complement of this graph G. So what is complement of a graph? Complement of a graph is a graph on the same vertex. So G and H both have same vertex set. If two vertices are adjacent in G, two distinct vertices of H are adjacent if and only they are not adjacent in G. Okay, this is the definition of complement of a graph. Question is, draw the graph complement of the graph K5. K5 is complete graph. Question is draw the complement of this graph K5. What is K5? This is complete graph having 5 vertices. So first draw the graph K5. K5. So there are 5 vertices here. Suppose this is V1, this is V2, V3, V4, V5. This is complete graph K5. So V1 is adjacent to all other vertices, and it is regular graph. V2 also adjacent to all vertices, all other vertices. V3 also adjacent to all other vertices. So this graph is complete graph K5. Question is draw the complement of K5. So K5 and the complement of K5. Suppose K5 bar. This is complement of K5. So both have same vertex set. So these are 5 vertices. This is V1. This is V2, V3, V4, V5. These are the 5 vertices. Okay. Now V1 is adjacent to all other vertices. So V1 adjacent to V2, V1 adjacent to V3, V1 adjacent to V4, V1 adjacent to V5. So V1 is adjacent to all other vertices V2, V3, V4, V5. So in K5, so V1 is not adjacent to any other vertices V2, V3, V4, V5. Okay. Similarly, V2 is also adjacent to all other vertices. So V2 is not adjacent to any other vertices V1, V3, V4, V5. V3 adjacent to all other vertices. So V3 is not adjacent here to any other vertices. V4 is not adjacent to all other vertices. So V4 is not adjacent here. V5. So this is the complement of this graph K5. This graph is the complement of complete graph K5. This graph. See, complement of K5 is isolated graph, just 5 vertices, degree of each vertex 0. Okay. This is a complement of K5. This is isolated graph. Next question. Draw the complement of the graph, bipartite graph K2, 3. So question is draw the complement of this bipartite graph K2, 3. This is bipartite graph having 2 distinct subsets vertex set. One has 2 vertices, another has 3 vertices. So first draw this graph K2, 3. So this is the graph K2, 3. Suppose this is V1, V2, V3. This is V4, V5. So V1 adjacent to all the vertices of this portion V4 and V5. This is complete bipartite graph. V2 adjacent to V4, V5. V3 adjacent to V4, V5. This is complete bipartite graph K2, 3. One vertex subset has 2 vertices V4, V5. Another vertex subset has 3 vertices V1, V2, V3. V1 adjacent to all vertices V4, V5. V2 adjacent to V4, V5. V3 adjacent to V4, V5. This is complete bipartite graph K2, 3. Now question is draw the complement of this graph K2, 3. Suppose that graph is K bar 2, 3. Okay, it has same vertex set. So this is V4, this is V5, and this one is V1, V2, V3. These are V4, V5, V1, V2, V3. Now V1 adjacent to V4, V5. So V1 is not adjacent to V4, V5. Okay, but here V1 is not adjacent to V2. V1 is not adjacent to V2. So V1 is adjacent to V2 in complement part. V1 is not adjacent to V3. So V1 is adjacent to V3 here. Okay, V1 adjacent to V4, V1 adjacent to V5. So V1 is not adjacent to V4, V1 is not adjacent to V5. Next, V2 not adjacent to V1. So V2 is adjacent to V1. V2 adjacent to V1, V2 is not adjacent to V3, so V2 is adjacent to V3 here. V2 adjacent to V4, V2 adjacent to V5 here, so V2 is not adjacent to V4, V5 here. Okay, next V3 adjacent to V3 is not adjacent to V1, so V3 adjacent to V1 here. V3 not adjacent to V2, so V3 adjacent to V2 here. V4 adjacent to V4, V3 adjacent to V4, V3 adjacent to V5. So V3 is not adjacent to V4, V5. Next, V4 adjacent to V1, V4 adjacent to V2, V4 adjacent to V3. So V4 is not adjacent to V1, V2, V3. Next, V4 adjacent is not adjacent to V5. So V4 adjacent to V5 here. Okay. V5 is not adjacent, V5 adjacent to V1, V2, V3. So V5 is not adjacent to V1, V2, V3 here. V5 is not adjacent to V4. So V5 is adjacent to V4 here. So this is the complement graph, this part. This is the complement graph, this complement of complete bipartite graph K2, 3. So complete bipartite graph K2, 3. Complement is disconnected graph. Not only that, this is not bipartite graph. So complement of K2, 3 is not bipartite graph. It is an example of disconnected graph. Okay.